on BBC Radio Wales.
It's the evening show on BBC Radio Wales from me, Alan Thompson. That is the first of 3 songs we're playing for you on the programme tonight from a great new album. That was the title track, in fact. The album is called Blue, and the singer-songwriter who's put that together is an American, and we're glad to have him in the studio tonight. His name is Joe Silva. Good evening to you, Joe.
Good evening, Alan. So good to be here and to meet you.
Well, it's good to be with you tonight. You see the way I said that? You're an American. For me, that's a glamorous thing. An American rocker in the studio tonight.
Well, it's great to be here. I'm actually thrilled to be at the BBC Radio Wales.
Well, it's good to have you. The song that we just heard there is the title track to your album. That was called Blue. Tell me a little bit about the song that we just heard there, the writing, the story. What's going on with Blue?
So Blue, actually, sadly, a dear friend of mine, it's the only one that song on the album that I've co-written with another person. His dad had passed away earlier that day, and he asked if I'd come over and just work on some music to help him clear his mind a bit. So I went over, and he had these two chords that really starts out Blue, and he said he's had these for years, hasn't known what to do with them. So I went into another room. I said, give me a few minutes. And I worked up the chorus, and certainly it couldn't have been a song that was cheery, considering the situation.
Yeah.
So instantly worked up the chorus very quickly, almost as if his dad had given me the words, and then went home and finished the rest of the song. And the result there is that particular tune, Blue, which became the title tune.
Right. And the album that you've put together, we're playing 3 songs from the album tonight. There's an interesting story that... where did you make the whole record? Because you've done some work in the legendary Sun Studios where Elvis and countless other rock legends recorded back in the day. Did you make the whole record in Sun Studios?
So what I did was, after 24 years of performing with a rock band called The Threats, I was a lead singing drummer. I decided that I wanted to switch directions a little bit and do a solo record acoustically. I had written a bunch of songs that just didn't fit with the whole power pop style that The Threats were. So I went down to Sun, did mostly piano, guitar, and vocals, and did 17 tracks down there. Was ready to master all 17 songs when I ran into Anton Fig in New York City. Being a drummer myself, certainly I could have added my own drum tracks, but him being a hero of mine, I decided to ask him if he would consider playing drums on 1 or 2 of the tracks. He said, send me the record, which I did. He called me back a week later saying that he couldn't get the songs out of his head and that he was willing to produce it for me. So that was the inception of the record, and half of David Letterman's band plays on it. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Saturday Night Live. Members of that band also play on it as well. So,
and Anton Fig, who produced the record, he is the drummer in Letterman's house band.
He is.
Right.
He is.
So how did you get to know him?
So I knew Will Lee, the bassist for David Letterman's house band, for several years. I was selling musical instruments at the time and also producing custom-made picks. And Will had a Beatles band called the Fab Four, and he wanted some Fab Four bass picks. So me being a big Letterman fan and also a fan of the CBS Orchestra, which is what they call the band, I asked if I could hand deliver his order in, and he agreed, and we instantly became friends. And once a month or every other month when I was in New York City, I'd visit the Ed Sullivan studio, which just being there historically where the Beatles played is a thrill for me.
Yeah.
So I was actually out with Will that night when Anton was along, and got to chat with him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you met Letterman?
It's funny. David Letterman is a very, very private person. I've been to the studio, a good 20 or so times. Whenever I'm backstage, if David Letterman's getting ready to go onto the stage or off of the stage, everyone gets corralled into the green room and they close the doors, so no one actually gets to see David. The only time I've actually seen David in person was when I sat out in the audience and watched the show. So I've never actually met David.
How weird. You've been there so many times. And that band, Paul Schaefer is the leader of that band.
Yes, he is.
So I used to love the Letterman show, and they showed it in this country. They are so tight, those guys. I mean, you're talking top quality musicians there.
They really are. And if you look at the discography on any of them, they've all played on dozens upon dozens of albums that we all grew up on or listen to today on the radio.
So you got the best guys to play on your record.
Yeah.
The recording process, Joe, how long did the whole album take to make?
Oh, gosh, it took a couple of years, actually.
Really?
Yeah, so I went through the process of a divorce when I got out of Sun Studio, which delayed it by a good 6 months before I even got ready to master it, which was a blessing in disguise because it allowed me to wait for that point where I actually met Anton Fig and took it to the next level. You know, certainly when Anton took the project, it was like winning the musical lottery for me.
Yeah, absolutely right. And recording at Sun Studios, is that still just a working studio? People can just hire that and record there, obviously.
You can. So that studio gives tours daily, 24/7. I shouldn't say 24/7, but 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Until 6 p.m. So sessions typically start around 6 p.m. They run until the morning. So that's what I would do. We'd go until 2, 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
I'd go back to the hotel, sleep a little bit, and start the process again around 11. We'd sit in the control room and do vocals or mixing while the tours were going through, and then at night we'd continue on with the piano or guitar or some of that stuff. So we did that for a week. But yes, folks are still going there. Tom Petty's going there to record. Ringo Starr, U2's been there on the Rattle and Hum record. So it's still a very active studio. And nothing's really changed. It's on the preservation list, so they can't change the building. You go in there, it has the same asbestos tiles on the ceilings and the same tiles on the floors that Elvis stood on, or Jerry Lee Lewis rolled his piano across, and just a great historic place.
That's amazing. And what about the gear? Are you using the same mics and the kit that Elvis was using?
So, no. So when I went down there, it was mostly an acoustic record, so I was using a digital piano, actually, and my acoustic guitar. And the microphones, I was using more modern mics. But Elvis's microphone is still there on the premises, so I did get to see that and touch it. And sickly, I guess, women come through on the tours and kiss it. So I wasn't going too close to those mics.
And what does that do for your performance? That would be like recording in Abbey Road or something, wouldn't it? The Beatles made the records, obviously. I mean, can you feel that sort of inspiration when you're in that room, or is it just a studio?
No, you absolutely can. So Sam Phillips, who started that studio, when he designed that room, he designed it as if it was a speaker box facing down. And the ceiling, if you look at it, it's almost like a series of V's that come down. Yeah. And it works so effectively. It's better than, say, egg cartons on walls. Yeah. But you can truly feel the compression on your own voice, even when you speak there. And as you're recording your own music, you can almost feel the same type of tones that Elvis was getting or Johnny Cash was getting. But, certainly you have to concentrate a little bit harder, because as you're in that room, you can't help but look around and just soak up all of that history, and it's easy to let your mind wander when really you're supposed to be doing a vocal track or a guitar track.
And I guess a possibility was that that situation would overwhelm you slightly. You've got to concentrate.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's have another track from the album. We started with the title track, which is called Blue. The next song we're hearing from the record tonight is Didn't Mean Like This.
Yeah, so that particular song, I mentioned earlier that I had to go through the process of a divorce. One of my very early memories, I was 7. I was sitting in a bathtub, taking a bath, and my dad had stuck his head into the door to tell me that he was leaving home, which was, certainly a shock for a 7-year-old boy. And I had promised myself that that's something I would absolutely never do. And unfortunately, when I faced divorce myself and had to do that with 2 children, there was a certain mental process that I had to go through to make sure that, my kids would be okay. So that it's all about that process of when I went through that.
A working week unfolds. It's on and on until we're old, measured by the things we've sold. You spent some time away. When you get back, I'm in LA. If you wanna call, I'll be in all day. You press my shirts before I go. I tore the house, checking all the windows. Cause I don't know how to leave this place. I think about the things I'll miss. When I said let's make memories, I didn't mean like this. You say I'm never there. Communication disappears. How you're talking and I keep walking. I'll help a friend who's old. Just before my dinner's cold, I come walking in, but no one's talking. When fights are lasting years or so, kids are left inside a haze to stumble through some jagged maze. Let's make a pact before I go, that true love is all they'll ever know. For I know it's time to leave this place. I turn and give the kids a kiss when I said let's make memories. You press my shirts before I go. I tore the house, checking all the windows.
It's the evening show on BBC Radio Wales with me, Alan Thompson. Singer-songwriter Joe Silva is in session on the programme tonight. He's got a great album available, which is called Blue, and it was recorded at the legendary Sun Studios in the US of A. He's talking to us tonight about the record, and that was the second of 3 tracks we're hearing tonight. That was called Didn't Mean Like This. From what you described before we heard that track there, it's obviously a very personal album that you've put together.
Yeah.
Now you've written that record, and you've written these songs about what's happened in your life. You mentioned the divorce and so on. How does it feel having your life on a record and people listening to it and talking about it and all that sort of stuff? It's, that must be quite a strange thing, in a way.
At first it's strange when you put out such a personal song, each one of them, and I look at them as many songwriters do as your kids, and you hope that they'll go as far as they can. But I've also wrestled, how much of myself should I put into a song? And I've also, though, noticed that people seem to really take to songs that, I've given my all because they've gone through something similar. So in a sense, I find it to be certainly therapeutic for myself, but I find that others, the way they describe it back to me is that it's helped them go through similar processes.
People can relate to what you're singing about, and getting that feedback from people who've listened to the record. As a writer, that must be such a positive thing. Somebody says to you, "Oh, that's exactly what I went through. I can relate to that." As a songwriter, that must be nice.
It really is. I mean, that's really all you hope for as a songwriter, to really touch folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about your history slightly, Joe. You mentioned that in the early 80s you were a drummer and a singer in a band called The Threats. Mm-hmm. A singing drummer. There aren't too many singing drummers. How did that become, because drums are your first instrument?
Yes.
So how did you end up as the lead singer of The Threats?
So throughout high school, I had a different lead singer. And at the time, we were opening for folks like the Buzzcocks lead singer, or Peter Talk from the Monkees, or Joan Jett. And after high school, upon graduation, he ended up getting his girlfriend pregnant and went off and joined the Marines and left a big void in the band. So I had auditioned, a good couple of dozen singers. And it seemed that each audition, I was like, well, can you try singing it like this and singing it like that? And finally, everyone was like, well, why don't you just take on the role? So I did. And unfortunately, it's been somewhat of a curse, too, though, even though it's different. We've done showcases in New York City where record companies were saying, we really like the band. If you can get a different drummer and get him out front to be a front person, it would be more the norm, and maybe we can go ahead and sign them. And, I just love drums too much to do that. So I constantly say no to that.
There haven't been too many singing drummers over the years. I'm moving through them in my head.
Don Henley.
Mickey Dolenz, Monkees.
There you go. I've actually met Mickey.
Phil Collins.
Yes.
There's been a few of them.
Yeah, one of my favorite, Levon Helm from the band, who unfortunately passed away this year.
Yeah. So. How tricky is it to play the drums and sing at the same time?
So I think for me, having been a drummer for so long, it was something that became more of a subconscious thing. So it wasn't something I was really thinking about when I was doing. So I found myself thinking more about how I was going to sell the song vocally. Yeah. And, the drumming thing was, again, not something I was thinking about. So actually one of the easiest things for me to do is perform as a singing drummer.
And that whole period, you're talking about the early 80s, you mentioned that the Threats were a kind of a power pop band.
Yes.
So there were some great bands that came out of America during that sort of new wave-ish period. I was very fond of a band called the DBs. Marshall Crenshaw was a singer-songwriter I liked. Didn't do too much in this country, but am I along the right lines? Was that the sort of thing that the Threats were doing? Harmonies, guitars, loads of chords, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, a lot of that type of stuff. And certainly when, so what had happened was we were doing a sound check, and the sound man at this particular venue came up to me and said, there's a band I saw last week in Boston. It reminds me a lot of you folks. You really have to check them out. They're called The Alarm. and they look like you guys, they sound like you guys. So I went out and bought the album that was out at the time called Declaration, fell in love with it, and I've instantly become a huge Alarm fan.
Really? Yeah. Mike Peters, legend. He's a Welsh national treasure, that guy.
Yes, he really is.
So you're a big Alarm fan. Oh, great.
Huge Alarm fan, which is the reason why I'm out here opening for Mike Peters on a 20-city tour acoustically right now.
Yeah, that's a nice thing, isn't it? For you to start off being an Alarm fan and then end up sort of, as you say, supporting Mike and touring around with him. He's a tremendous guy. What, as I say, a national treasure.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the songwriting. Who are your main kind of influences? We talked about your drumming and your past with the Threats. Songwriting influences now. Who sort of inspires you?
So that's all across the board. You know, as a youngster, I was very lucky to have older sisters that had a great record collection. So certainly I was turned on to folks like, you know, the Beatles, of course, and Queen and Edgar Winter and groups like that. But I think what really started me out as a songwriter, believe it or not, was as a child. Again, my mom was a single parent, and she used to pack us 5 kids. I was the only boy out of, all of us. And we would have this old Chevy that we would drive down to the beach in. She was a beach bum. And the Chevy came with 2 8-track cassettes, if you remember 8-tracks.
Yeah.
And one was the Guess Who, and the other one was Neil Diamond. So we had a deal that on the way down to the beach, we could crank American Woman and all those great Guess Who tunes. And on the way back, Mom got to hear Neil Diamond and try to put us all to sleep. So as my sisters slept, I would just kind of soak in all those melodies and lyrics. And I believe that was really the seed that started me as a songwriter.
Yeah. Bit of Beach Boys in there as well, maybe? Bit of Brian Wilson?
Yeah, Brian Wilson. As a matter of fact, Brian did some work with Anton Fig, my producer. So
that's right.
I'm hoping to get to meet Brian one of these days.
Yeah, you're a well-connected guy, aren't you, Joe Silva?
You know, I actually got to meet a Beatle back in June. I got to meet Ringo.
What?
Yeah, in New York City.
Where was that?
So he was doing an art show for a charity that he has. And Anton Fig, well, I had gone to the David Letterman show, and I had a pass to get into this art show. I had bought a piece of art over in Philadelphia when I was there on a show. And with buying the piece of art, you could meet Ringo. So earlier the day I was to meet Ringo, I was over at the Letterman show, and I invited Anton along with me. So he came, and thank God he did, because we walked into the room, and it was a room 200 people full of actors, actresses, famous musicians, all just standing and stomping on each other to get to Ringo. And he was behind ropes, and no one could really get to him, which was a big disappointment for most. But Anton moved his way right past the ropes, bringing me with him. And he and Ringo ensued in a conversation forever, and I got to meet him, get a few pictures with him.
You're joking. What did you say to Ringo Starr?
Well,
a drummer, of course. Singing drummer.
Well, to bring some clout to myself, I explained how Anton is my producer, and obviously that Ringo is a big, huge influence on me. I also, no one could get pictures with him, so I was lucky to, and I asked if he could take a picture with my wife, and he said, "Now you're getting greedy," which was a great line. But, it was a very quick meeting, but one that I'll never forget.
Oh, good man. Great. Listen, Joe, it's good to meet you. Thank you ever so much for joining us on the program tonight. Website address, what's that?
So if you go to, and you have to spell it all out, thejoesilvawebsite.com, and there you can check out videos, songs, my bio, see all the folks, the great musicians that play on my record.
Yeah.
And then send me a note or a Facebook friend me. That would be great. And Silva is spelled Silva.
Yeah, and that's your real name.
That's my real name.
Joe Silva's your real name.
That's my real name.
You were born to be a rock and roller.
I hope so.
Is the picture of you and Ringo on the website? Can we see it there? Or is that for your own personal use?
No, is it on the website? I will get it on the website.
Got to get that on there, Joe.
Yeah, I should. Yeah. I should. It's on my Facebook page, so you'll have to Facebook friend me if you want to see it immediately.
Okay, we'll certainly do that. We've got one more song to play from the album tonight. We've had Blue, which is the title track. Then we had Didn't Mean Like This. And the final song we're going to listen to from your album Blue tonight is called Where You Are. Tell me a little bit about this.
So Where You Are, certainly I didn't want the whole record to be doom and gloom or every song I write to be about heartache. And this is about the when you finally meet that right person in your life and how things can just totally change around. And no matter where that other person is, you have a connection.
Je t'aime que tu sois. Je t'aime que tu sois. Je t'aime que tu sois. It's where you are. known today you'd stand in front of me. The angels heard my cry only yesterday. Dreams that used to hide now run to me. To talk of love before is wasting words to say. True love was so far away, yeah. When I have you to hold, nothing gets any closer. I'm face to face with your soul. I could see you through the stars in the company of angels. It's where you are. When you have to leave, it begins to rain. Minutes turn to hours as the clocks rust. I feel you looking back as you board the plane. It feels like every mile in between us incomplete us. When I have you to hold, oh, it's sweet romance novels, the way our story is told. She's never been very far, though my heart might feel the distance. It's where you are. Where you are, it's where you are. I can hold your hand and feel what the future brings. Watch grandchildren play from a porch swing, where love means everything, yeah. But when I have you to hold, such a youthful love surrounds us. How could we ever grow old? Nothing takes us apart. My life